So I'm going to be talking about questioning authority and some of the updates that have been in it, and also do a demo. I wanted to acknowledge Dave Eichmann because he's done a lot of the work that you will see in here as well on our backend cache system. So I don't know what people know about QA, so I'm just going to do a really quick broad brush stroke of what QA is. The long-term name of it is questioning authority, and it basically does two things. In both cases, it's providing you access to authoritative data, and in one, it's doing a search, and the other, it will actually let you fetch a single term. There's base QA, and in that, you'll see that the search results return as an ID and a label. And then there's also a linked data module that returns the URI and also has an ability to return additional context. And for fetch, the base is just, again, the ID and the label. And if it's through the linked data, you can actually request it to come back in a number of formats. So I thought I would point out where the documentation is. There's three approaches to actually working with questioning authority. One are the predefined modules. So these come with QA every time you use it. They are created by writing a module that actually does the access and normalizes the data. It knows how to interpret the data. And the key piece about this is if you wanted to add another predefined module, you'd have to have a developer go out and write all that. So you can also do customized vocabularies where if you have a small vocabulary, you can define it in a YAML file by listing out the IDs and term labels. Or if it's larger, you can put it into a database and have it accessed that way. And if there's an additional authority out there that you want to create access to, there's also a facility to do that as a customization in your local application. The part I'm going to talk about the most today is really the linked data module. And the thing that's nice about that is if an authority has an API that will return back in some form of linked data, you can actually create the connection to that just with a configuration, and you don't have to touch any of the code. So I thought I'd do a quick system architecture. The large scale architecture is that there is applications at the top. So the fact that there's applications and it's not just one Ruby application like Hyrax, that's because when we implement this, we do it as a service and not embedding it directly into the application. So what that looks like, sorry, let me put this back in present mode. What that looks like is QA engine is what is in the Samvera community. And for the LD4P grant, we wrote a QA server engine that provides an administrative UI. And then from that, we create an application that serves as the lookup service. So that's a standalone Ruby application that has these three pieces of infrastructure inside it. And so what that does, if we kind of go through the process, is that the application makes a standard call that looks basically the same no matter what authority they're going to. And you can see that it has OCLC fast in the name. So that says we're going to the OCLC fast authority, and it says we're going to be looking up a personal name, and then it says query Twain. So that structure, that URL is basically the same no matter what authority you're going to. And under the covers, it gets turned into the URL that OCLC itself has for their API, and parameters can get changed around, how the query is defined gets turned around, but questioning authority is what knows how to make that conversion. And what you get back is a ton of RDF. And that's the key piece of what questioning authority is going to do for you on the normalization, is it takes that RDF, knows how to interpret it, and turns it into the normalized JSON that the applications actually work with. And so you can see it's got the URI for the term, the ID, and the label. And later I'm going to show you what extended context looks like, but it's too much to show in this particular place. So to do the quick demo, first I thought, since we talked about configurations, I would show you that the way that we get all the authorities in there is this. These are all the authorities. There's a long list of configurations that bring in the authorities. And to show you what, just quick what it looks like. So we use an IR template pattern to define the URL that we're going to access. And in this case, this is our cache server. So it's not directly to Agravoc, but I have one that goes directly to it as well. And so then I get to define what all the various parameters are and where they go into the URL. And then I told you there was extended context. So we have context down here as well. And it just defines what additional information do I want to come in with this authority. And in this case, I'm repeating the label in the extended context. That just makes it easier for the application to process it. But I'm also bringing in the broader and narrower. And this is a pretty simple extended context. Some of them can actually be quite complex and have a lot of information. And I won't go into any more of the technical details of this, but I just wanted you to be aware that those exist. Okay, so this is the actual lookup server, and it just has a landing page that tells you a little bit about it. It has a usage page that, like, if you were going to call it, it tells you how you would structure things to make the call. And I'm going to skip over authorities and come back to that in a minute. I'll actually jump over to monitor status. So we have a nightly cron job that runs and determines whether or not we can connect to all of the authorities that we support. And you can see there's a couple of them that have had some downtime, but for the most part, it's just up and running. We also have a section that talks about performance. And this is a way that we can kind of look back and see, you know, have some of them been struggling? They're a little slower, and then some are actually performing quite well. And it just gives us some diagnostics to know, do we need to look at those authorities and see if there's something we can do to improve their performance. And so the check status is a way that just online, if somebody tells you something's down, you can go, oh, I want to do a quick check on connection and just see if I can even get to that authority. And so it comes back, green is obviously good. It comes back and tells me, yes, I could fetch a term and I was able to do a search. So all is well. We also have a way to check accuracy. And I was just looking to see which one I picked out to do this with. So LOC, I'm going to do with LOC subjects. And some of these will take a little bit of time to run, but that's because it's running all of these tests. So it's not just running one, it's running multiple tests. And you can see here that, so in the expected position, we have catalogers and other people in the library staff who looked at the particular authority and said, this is where, if I did a search for guitar music, heavy metal, then I should find this particular subject URI by this position. And we actually found it by the 5th position. So we found it in better than what the catalogers said they expected it to be. And so we do a number of queries. We identify what the subject URIs are. This is just some additional information about what we searched. Like, was there a sub-authority? What authority was it? And then if you wanted to get to the actual search, you can actually, this is the actual link to the search that was performed. And so we can look real quick and see, how are we doing? And I want to show you one other one on accuracy. And the reason I wanted to show you this one is because it actually has a couple of tests that fail. And you can see there's a dog ear in the corner of the ones that failed. And that means that we already knew they were failing. So they've been marked pending. If you see one that's green and it has a dog ear, then we know, oh, that test has been fixed and we need to go remove the pending. And if you see one that's failing and it's not marked pending, then you go, oh, that's a new failure. It used to pass. And so again, that's diagnostic. We can look and see what's happening. All these accuracy tests, we actually have an RSpec test harness that will run all the tests. And so if we just want to see how everything's doing, we actually run the RSpec tests, and that instead of doing it interactively. So this is more if someone reports a problem and we want to go and check it out and see what's happening. So we also put in this ability to compare different test runs. And this works, and we use it in two ways. One is if there's a direct access and there was one in our cache, we can do a comparison to see how well do those two approaches work. Does the direct access to OCLC better than how our cache is performing? Maybe we need to do some tweaking. So in this particular case, actually, ours runs just slightly better on this test, but it's slightly worse on this test. And this one, they just didn't support that test at all. So that one comes up broken. But this was incredibly useful to do sort of this comparison to see, are we getting accuracy that's similar to what the provider itself gets in their own search? The other way we use this is we recently updated our indexing approach, and we were able to do, that's why it says before and after in the headers here, because we had the indexing approach we used in the before, and then we had the indexing approach we used in the after, and we could make sure that things improved but did not get worse. So we could do that kind of comparison. That was very helpful. So the other thing you can do, I'll actually show that in a minute. So we have API documentation. So all the API calls, I'm only showing a couple, search and fetch are the ones we look at the most, but you can actually do some other things like list everything. And you can test this out right in the API. So you can do that and get the list of authorities that are loaded up at this moment in time. You can also test out the search and fetch type API calls and see how they do. All right, and so the last thing I wanted to show is we list all the authorities and we give sample calls for all the authorities so that you can interact with them and test things out and see how it works. So I'm going to go down to LOC genre and do one of the searches. And this way you can see what the results look like. So if you're just doing the basic without context, you would just get these first three pieces. Context comes with this because this is set to true. So you can actually turn that off. The other thing I would note is I only requested 4 records. I can request many records, as many as I want. And so, but this is an example of the context that I was telling you about. So it gets configured. So now the application can decide to show this additional context. And the benefit of that is that it allows the user to make a more accurate selection. Because if you have something that's really close, you've got John Smith, an artist, and John Smith, a writer, you may not just be able to look at the name and tell which one is which. But if you can see something like their occupation, then you'd be able to go, oh, I wanted the one who was the writer. So I'm going to select that John Smith. The other thing that we do is sometimes the ontology that's used will actually have a label one step away from something like a broader term. So it'll be broader and it'll have an intermediate URI to actually get to it. And so we allow a path for how to pull in the actual label. And the other thing I wanted to show is the fetch. So I will comment, there's one other parameter I could have put on here. We support pagination because you can do a start record and say you want to start on record 16. So you're several pages down in the search results. And for some, you're not going to find the response high in the search results. So you want to be able to page down until you get to the actual item that wanted to be selected. So I'm just copying this URI because that's what's going to let me show what the fetch term does. Again, this is more, we don't use this regular, but it is more diagnostic. So I have to select genre, and then I can pick what format I want this to come back in. So if someone says they're having a problem with a particular URI in the fetch, we can come in here and look at it and see exactly what they were getting back. All right, so that is the demo. And I was just going to talk a little bit about our next steps for the QA server, what we're planning to do. And the main thing we're working on right now is containerization. And so we're using Docker to do this. And the first piece that we're containerizing is the QA Lookup Server itself. So that's this UI admin, which includes the actual QA lookup component and also has the authority access configurations. I will say that the authority access configurations actually are kept separate from the container, so that if you only wanted 2 of the authorities, you would just put in those 2 configurations and you don't have to have all that long list of authorities that you saw in my application. And the other piece that we're going to containerize is the authority index APIs. So that is what allows you to do the search and the fetch for the cache. And we're also going to provide those authority Lucene index files. And again, we're going to keep the index files separate from the container itself. That way you can just drop in the ones that you want to use. The configurations in QA server are actually quite small. So if you had them all, it really wouldn't be a burden. But the index files can be very large, especially when you start looking at something like LOC names, which is a very large authority file. So we set it up so you could do those separate. And the last piece that we're going to put in is containerize the builder of the index itself. So that would allow you to, if you had another authority that there's not already an index existing for, you have a way to ingest downloaded authority RDF data and generate your own Lucene index for that. So the containers include all the standard Docker stuff with the Docker file, Docker Compose, the application, various microservices like databases and things like that, Solar. And then it also has those configs and indices that would be in a separate, put into a file system instead of inside the container itself. And then we're also creating deployment aids as part of this. So we have currently, we're working on AWS templates and the usage instructions for how to do that. And we're considering, after those are up and working, we're considering looking at Helm charts for Kubernetes as well, since that's also a common way that people deploy. And the status of this work is we have the basic container for QA server working. We have the AWS templates defined, but we don't have all the instructions really fully fleshed out. So we're working on that and making sure that if somebody wanted to install this, it would be reasonably easy for them to pick it up and use this. We are in the process of developing the basic container for the authority index, and the rest of the work is still pending. We'll just keep working through this as part of the grant. So I thought I would talk just a second about why containerize and give a vision for the future. So part of this is that we just want to make this work something that other institutions can also take advantage of. But the other part is that these authority index files and the process of creating them is expensive. It takes a lot of processing power to create the index. They're fairly large once they're created. And there's a lot of network traffic if everything's going to a single site. So part of this is to share the expense of hosting all the authorities, and part of it is to create some balance in the load by sharing the services. And also, if once a network of institutions are hosting these, it provides a failover capacity. So if our particular connection for the LOC index is down, but your LOC genre index is up, then we could fail over to that. And that way, one of the things that's been a challenge is uptime to particular authorities. And so that gives us a way to kind of smooth that particular part of it out. And that's what I was going to talk about. So I wanted to see if there are any questions. All right, I'm not hearing any. So if you have questions later, you can feel free to reach out to me.